In 1990, Ron Underwood's horror comedy Tremors came to Germany as In the Land of the Rocket Worms. The US production made on an $11 million budget, in America only $17 million back, and was a flop, but became a hit on video, received consistently positive reviews, and developed quite rightly a cult status over the years. Until 2020, there were 6 direct-to-video sequels under different direction, and a TV series cancelled after 13 episodes in 2003. Here I personally distinguish between the passable old Tremors sequels until 2004 under the creative supervision of Stampede Entertainment. That's besides Ron Underwood, S.S. Wilson Part 2 and 4 and Brent Maddock Part 3, the only director credits of the two, with from time to time recurring characters and where CGI was still the exception. A few CGI shriekers are already in Part 2, from Part 3 on partially CGI graboids and so on, and the, from my point of view, not really convincing new ones since 2015, in which, except Michael Gross as Bert Gamma, who appears in everything Tremors, except for Bert's alleged son, who appears in Part 5 and 6, there is each time a completely new cast, and the rare endangered species are not graboids but practical effects. And since Part 5, also produced by a different, clearly less creative team, and all staged by the, let's say it politely, rather moderately talented Don Michael Paul. In 2018 there was also a TV series not picked up after the pilot, for the first time since Part 1, with a return of Kevin Bacon in the lead. The Blumhouse production is nothing safe from those hacks, directed by Vincenzo Natali. See also the Cube retrospective, has unfortunately not been released yet. There's only a trailer.
My love is stronger now than you'll ever know, and I won't ever let you go. My love is wider than the ocean can be, and it's deeper than the deep blue sea. My love goes higher than a mountain can rise, and I see it there in your eyes. My love gets tougher when the going gets rough, and believe me, I got more than enough. Keep trying, babe, keep holding on. There's a place we belong, where things are good, where love is strong. I'm never ever gonna leave you to cry on your own.
Well, Kevin Bacon and Earl Fred Ward make their living doing odd jobs in the tiny, population 14, isolated desert village of Perfection, Nevada. When they decide to finally move away, they notice unusual deaths, at first suspecting from a serial killer, and return to warn the valley. It turns out that they are dealing with several presumably prehistoric, large, sound-sensitive, worm-like blind creatures that move extremely fast underground. Why they call them graboids, and drag their victims down with their tentacles. They destroy the telephone lines, block the only road into the valley by causing a stone avalanche, and drive the inhabitants onto their house roofs after an attack. The survivors now try to trick the creatures somehow to escape the valley. The directorial debut of Ron Underwood, from Mighty Joe Young, see the King Kong retrospective, is basically just a very simple monster story that doesn't try to be more important than it is, like with endless smart-ass talks or unnecessarily complicated explanations. It gets straight to the point and clearly stands out from similar movies, primarily due to the good cast, but also has interesting likable characters in the supporting roles, like the quirky Stone owner or the Gammas, outside the town living gun nuts who, like any person with a clear mind, don't trust the government or their lackeys. So obviously my personal heroes. In the story, things don't just happen out of nowhere, but are established, aka set up beforehand, like the creatures learning from failures and therefore becoming more and more sophisticated, aka payoff, or the defective ice machine, which therefore suddenly starts to make noise. Great practical effects, ingenious editing, and intelligent ideas like the rock jumping or the creative use of dynamite make it one of the most entertaining monster movies, succeeding to balance suspense, horror, and comedy. It's just fun to watch.
I'm never ever gonna leave you to cry on your own. Never ever gonna not go and pick up the phone. I'm never ever gonna let you be chilled to the bone. No, no, never. No, no, never.
In 1996, Tremors 2 Aftershocks is in Germany the return of the rocket worms, of course. 6 years after the last attack, Earl is asked for help by the owner of a Mexican oil field who has already lost some workers to graboids. After Buddy Well, here only as a photo, has already refused. Since now on his way to the movie stars in Apollo 13, and as with all Apollo missions, without reaching the goal.
Houston, we have a problem.
In Mexico, Earl and his new partner use successfully explosive remote-controlled toy trucks as bait and bring in Bert Gamma, the wife, also just a picture, as additional backup. They find out that the worms develop into several walking creatures, here still nameless. They are called shriekers since part 3, which now hunt above the ground and locate their prey with infrared sensory organs. Fred Ward, very good in supporting roles like in Escape from Alcatraz and The Right Stuff, is here not really convincing as lead. He works much better in this type of movie as support rather than an action hero. Despite some lengths, the still recommendable sequel doesn't exactly shine with a believable story either. So graboids are the oldest living beings, 650 million years, from the time of single-celled organisms, and turn into shriekers, which also produce shriekers themselves, and the obviously incompetent Mexican provide unlimited equipment, weapons, and if desired even a whole army? Sure. But through sympathetic characters, mainly Michael Gross as Bert Gamma, who steals again every scene, some nice practical effects, copies for a change not just the first, and also introduces new elements. It is considered one of the extremely rare good direct-to-video sequels. Tremors 2 After Bacon almost didn't get made due to the lack of star power, significantly reduced budget, from planned 17 million to 4 million. So the production was moved from Australia to Mexico. Elaborate action scenes like the one in which the characters fight the monsters with Civil War muskets, later realized in the TV series, and extras. In the end, the entire cast consists only of 8 people, were cut, and cast and crew lowered their pay demands. In some cases even worked for free.
No, never. I'm never ever gonna leave when you're lost in the storm. Never ever gonna not keep you safe where it's warm. I never ever will desert you when your heart is torn. No, never. No, never. My love shines brighter than a twinkling star. Baby, no matter where you are, and my love keeps burning like an eternal flame. You can feel it when I'm calling your name.
2001, Tremors 3 Back to Perfection became in our country the new Brood, but aired as Revenge of the Rocket Worms. It also serves as a kind of pilot for the 2003 TV series. 5 years since the last one, Bert Gamma returns after graboid hunting in Argentina to Perfection Valley, which is now a tourist attraction, where visitors are ripped off with staged attacks by windy salesmen. When real monster worms appear, which later evolved from the familiar shriekers into gliders, so-called ass blasters, from whose eggs the worms then hatch. Graboids are declared as an endangered species by the government, prohibiting the hunt for them. The visibly more elaborate sequel, estimated at $6 million, has as usual a crazy, far-fetched story and some lengths, especially in the first half. Except for the part with a government agency that despises property and human life, pretending to protect the species just to blackmail people with confiscating their homes if they don't catch a graboid alive. That is just too prophetic. Seeing our government climate protection terror of the simple citizen, and particular self-employed, by a systematically genocidal, installed by billionaires, eco-fascistic, dirty communist junta with final solution.
And then the final solution:
expropriation, enslavement and reduction of humanity. See more in the Deep State COVID-1984 videos.
Maybe we shouldn't call the vaccine the final solution.
Best on currently still relatively uncensored platforms like my Telegram, BitChute or Odysee channels, which are also called the Lone Wolf Cub, or in the original German version, Der Japango. Tremors 3 Almost Back to Perfection scores again with Michael Gross. From now on the lead, who can easily carry the movie and has visibly fun with the character. There's more action and again nice practical effects, with admittedly a bit more than the predecessor, some implementation and budget conditioned not so great ones with terrible CGI. Especially the mini ass blast dragons whatever, which first fly by after an hour into the movie. And stupid illogical actions like burning a car as bait and then taking a walk instead of of, I don't know, maybe just getting in and escape?
I'm never ever gonna leave you to cry on your own. Never ever gonna not go and pick up the phone. I'm never ever gonna let.
Or at the first sign of danger, unnecessarily blowing up their own bunker? But at the end, still a pleasant return to Perfection Valley with some supporting characters from the original, 4 to be precise, and perfectly fine new ones, like the sidekick and the owner's daughter who is now running the store, that aren't as annoying as the addition in the last one, but in general it is rated worse than part 2. In the final of this kind of serious pilot, a captured ass blaster is sold to Siegfried and Roy, which later escapes and returns in the series, and Bert spares a white, sterile graboid, El Blanco, to keep a greedy landowner salesman in check and the oh so animal loving authorities happy.
Keep trying, babe. Keep holding on. There's a place we belong, where things are good, where love is strong. I'm never ever gonna leave you to cry on your own. Never ever gonna not go and pick up the phone. I'm never ever gonna let you be true to the bone. No, no, never. No, no, never.
In 2003, the TV series continues the events in 13 45-minute episodes and follows constantly under observation of a government official, Bert and the residents of Perfection, among them 4 actors and characters from the movies, trying to live with the albino graboid El Blanco. While they struggle with the problems caused among others by the greedy landowner, gangsters looking for an important key, mad scientists with good intentions, also known as the material with which the road to hell is built, a UFO-believing town that thinks the graboids are aliens, mutated killer plants that spray acid, a mutant killer shrimp, a swarm of mutant killer bugs, deluded eco-activist simpletons who allow themselves to be used by opportunists for their careers with falsified data from bored self-proclaimed so-called experts who justify with alleged protection for the current alleged victim of the week, in this case graboids, psychological terror, torture, displacement and destruction of property and livelihoods. Gender, language, climate, health and eco-fascists and their sheer unbearable simple-minded disciples send their regards. Or threats from Ukrainian, secret biolabs that the government as usual wants to cover up. Therefore Schlock TV relatively well cast with if you are drunk as a skunk with both eyes tightly closed, passable effects, extremely entertaining series was staged among others by well-known genre directors like Bradford May and Jack Shoulder and is a real tip. But the Sci-Fi Channel probably couldn't stand it for some reason and aired the episodes in a wrong, seemingly random order. Episode 2 was actually episode 6, 5 was actually 9, the last one was the former second one, and so on. And even despite a continuously building plot. As a result, some episodes had to be practically at the last minute re-edited. In subplots with guest stars like Christopher Lloyd that went over several episodes, the first episode was now suddenly the last. One episode got for reasons drastic cuts and so on. After an actually very positive start, triggered worse reviews, followed by lower viewing numbers aka revenue, leading to the cancellation mid-season. The DVD release with the correct order came in 2010. The wrong order can still be found on the usual so-called movie sites and the defamation tool Fakepedia.
No, no, never. My love shines brighter than a twinkling star. Baby, no matter where you are, and my love keeps burning like an eternal flame. You can feel it when I'm calling your name. Keep trying, babe. Keep holding on. There's a place we belong, where things are good, where love is strong.
In 2004, Part 4 confusingly plays 100 years in the past, and not in space like all the other fourth horror parts back then. I see. Bloodline is the next one. In Tremors 4, the legend begins. A silver mine is forced to close after a mysterious incident involving monster worms that kill several workers. Whereupon the owner, Bert's ancestor, travels to the practically abandoned village of Rejection, later Perfection, and hires with his last money a gunslinger to take care of the problem, who teaches the initially still arrogant Gamma, who has zero experience with weapons, how to handle a gun, kind of, before he also gets eaten by the graboids. What Gamma initially tempts to run away, to stretch the already too long and too slow, much too talkative Western even unnecessarily a bit more, but then goes back because script says so. And finally, all armed, although hardly anyone shoots, most of the time they just stand around, look stupid or talk, they defeat the creatures, in the lamest final ever, where even the worms seem to commit suicide out of sheer boredom, like for no reason appearing several times exactly in front of a giant cannon, or sprinting precisely through a half-buried saw, or stretch out so far like a beached whale to easily get hooked. The often illogical reference parade, what kind of protection do rocks offer since the little worms at the beginning clearly fly through the air, is despite an interesting basic idea rather unimaginative, doesn't have any interesting character apart from the gunslinger who dies early on, and there's hardly any action. Only the few practical effects are worth seeing here. 20 seconds before the end credits they came up with a machine gun, like telling the audience, we could have done that, but we didn't. Tremors 4, How All Hope Disappeared, is undoubtedly the weakest entry from the originals, and from my point of view it only maybe could have worked by editing it down for a special episode for the TV series.
I'm never ever gonna leave you to cry on your own. Never ever gonna not go and pick up the phone. I'm never ever gonna let you be chilled to the bone. No, no, never. No, no, never.
In Tremors 5, Bloodlines from 2015, Bert hunts graboids in South Africa and learns on the occasion that he got tricked by poachers pretending to work for the government, and that his new cameraman, who constantly calls him Pups, is actually his illegitimate son. In the credits there's also an embarrassing father and son trailer. The positive feedback at the time came mainly from fans of the franchise, who after years of false announcements were just happy that it was somehow continued.
My love keeps burning.
Which, as we all know, is the most important thing, no matter what we get. So there was the usual whatsoever, in which Universal Pictures, in the tradition of BBC, CBS, Disney, Warner and other franchise graveyard administrators, got rid of the real creative people, who were there with heart and devotion from the beginning, in this case Stampede Entertainment. With their names in the producer credits, but without creative control, the people should be deceived, but they turned down the offer to now get fan fiction generated by Who Cares. There's really nothing wrong with the passable cast except for the alleged son, which sucks, or even the 2015 effects. God, how I hate CGI. But once again the sloppy script, stolen from everywhere, Jurassic Park for example, with new nonsensical changes like tentacles which now suddenly make themselves independent. It's suddenly supposedly about some queen, as if they had not already stolen shamelessly enough from aliens. And Bert, after 25 years of monster hunting, still has to be told, like a 5-year-old, that he should negotiate terms before accepting a job. And what has become of his skepticism? He acts here sometimes like a trusting idiot who believes everything and questions nothing, simply so that things can happen. In one scene he even lets himself be peed on, so much for pissheads defending this crap. Or is dragged half naked in a cage through the desert for no reason, because haha. I had already completely forgotten that one, although I saw it only a few years ago, while I still remember each of the old ones, even after decades. Most critics, however, did not get nostalgia blinded from this sterile, dull, unfunny film student level bore, with its amateurish use of slow motion, shaky cam and other incompetence cover-up tools.
My love is stronger now than you'll ever know, and I won't ever let you go. My love is wider than the ocean can be, and it's deeper than the deep blue sea. My love goes higher than a mountain can rise,
But Part 5 is still Citizen Kane compared to Tremors 6, A Cold Day in Hell. Bert, meanwhile, new shop owner, last inhabitant of perfection and bankrupt with tax problems, probably because he never negotiates and always immediately agrees, gets a visit from his son and begins to hallucinate during a monster hunt job in the Arctic tundra of Canada, which he again accepts immediately without any terms whatsoever. In the ice station there is a doctor who is supposed to be the daughter of Val, aka Kevin Bacon from Part 1. And of course her name is also Val. And it is pretended that Bert had something to do with Big Val, but they hardly knew each other in the first movie. Little Val finds out that Bert has been slowly poisoned since Tremors 3, when he got eaten by one, so for 17 years. But now has only 48 hours to live and can only be saved by a serum extracted from a living graboid, because that's just the way it is. So a really happy coincidence that he went there, and that there's an unsympathetic civil servant working next door, who can be humiliated and blackmailed to delete his taxes. There's also another embarrassing pee scene, probably a fetish of the makers. Bert just acts tired and sad here. There's no fun to watch it. Scammer 6, A Hot Day in the Arctic, waves its flag seemingly steeply into the current agenda wind and spreads some bullshit about the alleged global warming as the reason for the now disappearing ice and the heat in the Arctic, which is why the worms are now able to dig there too. Sure. But the truth is, they shot this one like the last one in South Africa, and it shows. That's why the opening scene, the one with the computer snow and stuff, looks like it's from a completely different movie, namely the one for which the viewer puts this junk on in the first place. Since these effects don't appear in the rest of the movie, probably too expensive. The whole thing takes place on land and not in the ice, most of the time in a room that is supposed to represent the ice station, but you don't believe that for a second. Everything looks like always, just with a shitty bluish filter over it, which gave scammed customers for sure icy chills down their spine. The whole ice setting, the misleading title and the misleading marketing are, from my point of view, outright fraud. And the fact that it's uninteresting and crap doesn't help either. It is quite rightly considered the worst installment in the series.
My love shines brighter than a twinkle inside. Baby, no matter where you are, and my love keeps burning like a...
Significantly better comes in 2020 Tremors Shrieker Island, which sat on the shelf since 2019. In Jurassic Fart, to be exact, also 500 grams of lightly sorted Forgotten World, an implied pinch of well-hung third part, 2 heaping tablespoons of briefly steamed Jurassic World, and a subtle knife tip, already slightly stale Predator.
They hunt by heat signature, like Predator.
Never ever gonna leave you to cry on your own. Never ever gonna not go and pick up the phone. Never ever gonna let you be jailed to the bone. Never.
Bert has retired on an island and is called to another island to help, because on the Photoshop dark filter island nearby, a crazy billionaire lets hobby mercenaries who are willing to pay hunt for his genetically manipulated graboids, which apparently now also spread on the island without Photoshop dark filter, which is why Bert, as always the only bright spot, now has to fight them with new sidekick, since allegedly son Travis is for identity fraud in the Poochie movie and series jail for shamelessly made up supposed relatives by Bert's son, greet in their Spock's sister, and therefore unfortunately not available. But his alleged mom? I have the feeling they should count again in the Poochie jail if someone has escaped, like our Dinoids here. Tremors Park 7, Forgotten Reference Predator Island World, has dinosaur big logic holes. The new, completely stranger sidekick obviously jumps in at short notice for the son character, without really changing the script. His still often acts as he is close to Bert. This also applies to the alleged mom, who actually has nothing to do there now. T7 is probably the best of the new ones, and as a movie for itself, probably okay, at least for what people call a movie nowadays, I guess. Since a bit better cast and effects, depends if you like darkened, sharky PlayStation cutscenes and more clearly copied scenes from Jurassic Park, coincidentally also from Universal Pictures, sometimes one-on-one, as if they're shot in the same setting. They could have taken raptors directly and called them shriekers, or used directly the original scenes. There is hardly a difference. Oh, and before I forget, Bert dies here, by the way. In my headcanon, the series ends in 2003, in perfection, and not on some shitty island. That would be just like disposing Captain Kirk alone under some rocks on some random planet in the fuck you fans system.